Wait, you don't know fisheye placebo? You mean this placebo? Don't worry, my pinecones, I'm not actually talking about that placebo.
Whoever you are, thank you.
The only actual placebo is buried deep in the trenches of webtoon, known to some but not many as Fisheye Placebo, which is a webcomic series you should be reading. Reading. Now that I think that I've successfully threatened you, I should probably explain what fisheye placebo is. But first, we need to trace its origins back to the distant year of 2011.
Hold up!
Speaking of distant, 2011 was actually 13 years ago, and some of you are 13. Do you know what I was doing when I was 13?
Jump scare.
Sorry about that, I will actually talk about the comic. So, the first ever snippets of Fisheye Placebo were posted on March 23rd, 2011 on DeviantArt by creator Wen Qingyan, better known as Yuumei. And exactly 2 years later, we got the first comic strip called Intro. And that, ladies and gents, and everything in between, was the beginning of a fairly successful comic with huge potential for the future. Until the hiatus.
I can't stop what it means to be. More of it happening. The past, the experience. Never dwell on the evidence.
As we know, some of history's greatest and most popular works have struggled with their battle for recognition, and Fisheye Placebo is no exception to that rule. So, unless you possess the immunity of the Hunter x Hunter fandom, it's likely that yours won't survive a hiatus. Actually, the biggest paradox here is that Yuumei herself is not an unknown individual in the art community. In fact, she's quite popular. However, as I mentioned, there was a hiatus involved, and that Yuumei injured her hand and Fisheye Placebo was left chapterless for about 3 years. And that pretty much buried the fandom, and when it came back, people were surprised that Yuumei was the creator. But I think the biggest issue here is that we have this fairly popular person of the art community whose craft just goes unnoticed. And I think that should change. So, my dearest pinecones, that is why I'm here to explain why Fisheye Placebo is an actual masterpiece in disguise. Let's go! I'm going to be honest, if you've observed the world long enough, you would realize that we're not all born equal. There are some that live under a regime of constant censorship and surveillance, an inability to express their thoughts, all the while being deprived of simple pleasures. However, that's never been an issue for a talented hacker but incel Vance Lee, who lives among those fortunate enough to afford a home. And his story begins with one simple goal: hack his university's firewall. And why, you might be asking? Me personally, I would just change my grades, but our boy Vance has other ideas. He wants to assign himself a quote-unquote hot roommate.
And they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
However, his genius plan is short-lived, and our Vancey boy gets caught by two mysterious characters we're yet to find out about. But for now, let's keep examining one of the most egocentrical but also most potent for growth characters of Fisheye Placebo. But really, his character analysis would be incomplete without explaining about the world he lives in and his place in it. So buckle up, I'm about to spitfire the entire world building in 2 minutes or less. The story of Fisheye Placebo takes place in the fictional country of Syria, located between Russia, China, India, Iran, and other Middle Eastern countries. But more specifically, the story takes place in Stuxent, which is this rich metropolis surrounded by skyscrapers and slums on the outskirts. Our main cast studies in Stuxent University, and each year students are supposed to take the National Harmony exam, which basically evaluates how brainwashed they are. Then we have the Solar Eye, which is the censorship organization that works directly for the government and censors the entire media. And last but not least, we have the Vox Populi, which is this underground newspaper that spreads word about the corruption of this country. And actually, one of our main characters, Robin, lands a spot as a member. So I think that's all the essential information in order to proceed with the story, and everything else we'll learn on the spot. So basically, the build-up to chapter 1 is our Vancy boy moving into his new university dorm, expecting to find his red-headed roommate whom he's been chatting with for a while. But turns out that Vance has been sort of catfished. So instead of seeing Robin in his dorm, he sees Frey.
What the hell? Oh my god!
Oh, and how do I begin to describe Frey? Among other things, he's probably one of the most important figures in Vance's change. And he's also the initiator behind infiltrating the Solar Eye. Other quick trivia includes that he also plays the violin, which he calls the Sound and Fury, and he's also an extremely talented hacker like Vance. Oh, and since his appearance is sort of androgynous, he also has a cross-dressing alter ego which he uses to get information out of people. We haven't seen it in the series yet, unlike Robin, who contrasts Frey very well because she also cross-dresses as a photographer, and her story is very interesting as well. I mean, I'm mostly saying that because you gotta praise the androgyny of this comic, it's really well done. Anyways, Frey surprises Vance and immediately gives him an ultimatum. Since his little hack job was exposed, he needs to help Frey on his little shenanigans from now on. So with a little university blackmail, Frey gets Vance to join him on a shredded paper scavenger hunt. Because Frey's idea of fun is looking for anything suspicious, and that is besides the cucumber. On their way back, they run into Ali, a Vox Populi member. And once again, Frey blackmails his way into expressing his wish to join the Voice of the People. But Ali tells him he needs to pass the test. More on that later. So if we go back to Vance, we can see that this whole Frey business has been taking its toll on him. There is no hot roommate. This shredded paper thing seems absolutely useless until he sees something. He realizes that he could rearrange the shredded paper into a message. So after tons of cans of red cow, it turns up to be the National Harmony exam. And why is this important? Because when Robin finally shows up, she starts writing the most absurd answers on the test, and when I tell you, Vance absolutely freaks out. And yet, before we see what happens to her after she botched the test, we gotta ask the question, where has Robin been all this time? But I'm afraid that's a question for next time.